this. You see so many people walking around like love and light, man, everything's great. And it's just like, wow, their life is a dumpster fire. So maybe we could just maybe take a step back and go like, is love and light solving your problems?
Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to Beckoning Brilliance. I'm your host, Becca Booka, and we have a very special guest today. It is Anne Bienvenue of Quantum Wellness. She's a functional health practitioner that focuses on all areas of healing. And today we'll be talking about emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, and why we need to embrace all of them and feel them fully. This is an episode that I feel like everyone should listen to, so buckle up, baby. It's going to get real. Also, I had some audio issues. There's a little bit of echo on my end about halfway through the conversation, but you'll be listening to Anne anyway, so hopefully it doesn't hurt your ears too much. Let's get into it. Anne.
Becca, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too. I'm so happy that you joined me. If you listened to my episode last week, I mentioned you a lot. And afterwards, a bunch of people messaged me and they were like, okay, who is Anne? I need to know more about her. So here you are in the flesh. We are talking about emotions today. And I feel like this episode should probably come with a trigger warning because I know you're going to say some things that will blow people's minds. So before we get into all those questions, I'm going to have you explain how you got into what you're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I love it when people want to know what I do. So first and foremost, I work with health in all ways. So I use muscle testing to test through the acupoints of the body to balance out nutrition. And I work with all health issues. I also work with emotions and remediating houses because our house is heavy and our house wins the battle against our health. So the reason that I got into emotions is that every client I saw for the past 30 years had an emotional regulation issue. And the way in which issues develop with our body is through emotions in the field. So we have a field around our body, and that's where basically it's our energetic system of our body, our biofield. And emotions reside there and they start there. And when we do not process them correctly, or process them at all, I probably should have said, it creates issues in the body with our health. Okay. And so if I'm working with health issues, I have to go to the root cause emotion first. Mm-hmm. So that's why I do this.
I love it. I want to know more about the home remediation. So I'll have to have you on again many times.
That'd be awesome.
Well, when I told people that you were going to be on here talking about emotions, I had some questions pop up from some of my friends. One of the questions was, where do emotions come from? Why do our hormones control our emotions? Shouldn't our brains? I feel like you would have something to say about that.
I have a lot to say about that. And what are emotions? Emotions are a frequency. They're a vibration. Okay. They're energy, and energy is neither good nor bad. It's how it's used. So emotions start as this frequency, and how they're supposed to work is that it's supposed to start as a frequency and we're supposed to process them through the body, meaning feel them. And as we feel them, we work through them and they process out. We drop them out. That's how the process is supposed to work. That's not how it works. It gets hijacked. And how does it get hijacked? Because when we're a child, we will experience something. And when we're a child, we experience it to the greatest extent because it's the first time we're feeling these emotions. So the first time we're afraid, the first time we get scared, angry, all of these things are in us from when we're a child. And now we remember feeling them and we didn't like them. So as we're an adult, we have new experiences that happen and we're going through that Rolodex in our head. Like, hey, when have I experienced something like this before? Oh yeah, that's what that emotion is. And we start to actually vibrate. Our organs and glands actually start to vibrate at the frequency of the determined emotion. Now and when that happens, we're supposed to feel the emotion and allow it to go. Mm-hmm. We don't do that because we're so smart and we're trying to use our brain, right? So what we do is we hijack it and we're like, stop, and we shut it down. How many times have you yourself or anybody, started to feel something. And then they're like, no, instead of feeling that, I'm going to eat something. Or I'm going to go buy something, or
Story of my life.
I'm going to have sex, or whatever it is, or you just shove it down and say everything's fine. When we do that, those emotions, those frequencies get stored in our organs and glands. And now we have a problem.
So I'm assuming that's how like all health issues begin.
Exactly. And to your point about hormones, it's not that hormones determine our emotions. It is that when we're in a hormonal cycle, usually a few days before our period, what will happen is certain hormones will be elevated and others will decrease. And during that time, it's like we take our rose-colored glasses off and we're really seeing things as they are and amplified, things that we're not dealing with during the rest of the month. So if we could learn to emotionally regulate and actually have emotional responses and behavior that matches the actual situation in real time, then guess what? When we have our cycle, we're not going high and low as much.
So you're saying I don't need to be a train wreck around my period?
Not really, no. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not going to be more on edge because the hormones do shift. What I would actually suggest is coming in for an appointment and getting hormonally regulated, so that we're not having such swings.
Sure, that makes sense. Another question that my friends wanted to know about was, how do I get rid of feeling like X? How do I stop feeling anxious? How do I stop feeling guilty? And I love what you said and also what you do in your program. Is that you actually encourage us to feel our emotions, because otherwise how can we actually work through them? Where I think that is a misconception, is a lot of people think, oh, if I just stop feeling guilty, everything's going to be great. But it's like, how do you stop feeling guilty if you're not working through them? So
exactly. So there's a couple of things there. We all know the person that doesn't want to talk about something because it's uncomfortable, or the person that just shoves it down, or maybe that's us. And probably it is us for certain things. We all have pockets of different emotional responses with different topics, but we can't really just stop feeling something. That actually makes me very concerned for that person, that they want to just stop feeling this way. However, I do understand we all want to feel better, right? We all want to feel better, and that's fantastic. And so maybe that's what that person meant a little bit more. How do I feel better? Not how do I not feel this? And to your point, there is no magic wand that just transmutes emotions and now we only feel fantastic. We can't only feel fantastic in life. We have to learn the emotional regulation of, we're going to have highs and lows in life. They just don't have to be so dramatic. We want to be able to grieve. We want to be able to get angry. We want to be able to feel joy. We want to be able to be elated. What we don't really want is to have, anxiety, or get stuck in a pattern of depression and, or I can't do something, and, or I'm always nervous, right? We don't want to be stuck in a pattern of worry or a pattern of anger. So what we do is we actually have to go to the root and what really is going on. We have to determine where we actually are. And most people are unaware of where they actually are. And I don't want to say that they're lying, because they're not lying. They're unaware. Most people, especially in self-help or in the new age community, think that they're much higher emotionally than they are. And we've talked about this. They think that they're all love and light, or I can just go get an energy session, or I can just go talk to this person. They're going to have this magic thing that's going to make everything all better. And that's not true. We all have to do the work. It's not that energy sessions are bad. It's not that any of these things can't help. It's that the actual work still has to be done. One thing that I go over with people is, hey, I bet that you've been to the acupuncturist, the astrologist, the Reiki master, I bet you've done steam saunas. I bet you've done Wim Hof. I bet you've done all of these things. I bet you take supplements. I bet you've been to, you think that all of these things are going to be the thing that corrects everything. And while I do most of those things, not all of them, but I do most of those things, there's nothing inherently wrong with any of them. They just aren't going to change your life in the way that you actually want to. You want to feel better, then we're going to have to do the work to process it. And to do the work, you have to commit to doing it, which means we have to use techniques to go into the subconscious and really find out why you keep repeating a pattern that keeps creating issues in your life. And then we have to have techniques that help us process. So we literally have to process them. We have to feel them.
It's interesting because as you were going through all those different modalities of healing, the self-help kind of stuff, I was thinking to myself, and you're like, yeah, you have to do the work. And I'm like, I feel like when I was really into the whole new agey self-help kind of world, I thought that that was the work. You know, I'm like, oh, if I do this breathing work, if I do this, like I thought that like this is what's going to make me feel better. And like you said, it's a tool, but it's not the work. So full disclosure, I have been working with you for over 10 years and I have taken your emotional reset course, which changed my life. I know that you're doing another round of it right now or coming up.
I am doing another round of the emotional reset. It's starting on March 7th. If people have questions, they can reach out to me. Also, anybody that might want to sign up through this podcast, you get 30% off with the code VIP30 on my website, quantumwellness.site. But if you want to know what it is and what we do, we're taking, the reason I decided to create it is because I wanted to be able to work with people in a more efficient, effective way. Because I work one-on-one, and that gets quite pricey for people. It's valuable, but I have to meet people where they are. So I wanted to be able to work with a group of individuals. I don't let it get too big because I don't understand people that work with hundreds or even thousands of people at a time. It doesn't make sense because I still need to meet with you one-on-one. So during the course, I am helping guide you through the work that we do one-on-one, but it's about 2 years of work in 8 weeks. So it's an 8-week course that, well, it's really kind of 12 weeks because it's 8 weeks with me one-on-one, in a group, and then 4 weeks where you're going to be doing some stuff on your own. Okay. And then we're going to meet again. And we're taking you through figuring out where you are and where you want to be. We can't ever get where we want to be if we don't know where we are. And the majority of people have no idea where they are.
Yeah. Something that I think is really valuable to know is the scale of emotions that you talk about. Mm-hmm. I feel like that is such a simple way because like you said, so many people are so disconnected of how they even actually feel. So can you kind of describe what that is?
Sure. And I've learned the scale of emotions from many of my mentors. And it's always a little bit different, but specifically the one I work with is at the bottom. Look, we'll start at the bottom. We have apathy. And, that's probably, in my opinion, the lowest of the emotions. It's the place where you feel like you just can't, and we all know somebody that's there or we've been there ourselves. And then you're going up into shame and grief and fear and anger and pride. And then when you get over pride, you can go up into courage. And when you get into courage, you can commit to things and you can actually start to live the life you want. But every step on that rung is exponential. It's not like 1 point. It's like thousands of points. Every time you go up, you are allowing yourself access to so much more energy. Meaning, when you're in apathy, you literally can't do anything because you're using all of your energy to suppress your emotions, to hold them down and not process them. So if you're using all of your energy to do that, it's no wonder that we feel like we can't do anything else, right? And every time you're going up a level, you are allowing yourself access to more energy. So when you do that, you can do more. You feel better. You literally feel better as you go up. The reason why I was saying that it's really important to understand where we are is that most people think they're much higher on that scale, on that map, than they actually are. And so if we don't know where we are, but we know where we want to go, we don't have the right coordinates. If we don't have the right coordinates, our GPS system is totally off. So how can we get there? So what tends to happen is everybody thinks that they're up in courage or in love or whatever it is. And then they're aiming for the next rung up. But that's like starting at the bottom of a ladder and taking a leap to the top of the ladder. You're just going to fall down. It's not, you're not going to be able to sustain that and or actually gain any real benefit from it, So we have to first establish where we are, which for most people is really intimidating and confronting.
For sure. I think it's an interesting concept with the whole emotional scale because working your way up, because I think a lot of people, like when I've been in apathy or if I've just been feeling awful, I'm like, I want to feel like that. I want to feel love. Like every time I would read a description of like what all of those emotions boil down to, I'm like, yes, I want to feel like that.
I'm gonna jump.
So then like making a jump from apathy to love, and then obviously you can't do it because you haven't worked through those emotions. Right. Then you feel like shit and you're like, well, this is why I can't do it. This is why I can't be happy. This is why. And it's just like that constant cycle of self-sabotage and that hamster wheel, you know?
You're just circling because you're like, but if I can't get there, and think about it. I made one jump and I didn't get to where I wanted to go. Fuck it. Yeah. I'm not going to do it anymore. And no, we all feel like that sometimes, and that's okay. Yeah. That's why it's so critical to identify where you are. And it doesn't mean it's where you are in all ways. We have pockets. We have pockets. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, I don't have any of these issues. Okay. Well, let's take a look at your life. How is it going? And let's look at each area, because somebody might be just totally killing it in so many areas, encourage, out creating things, but maybe relationships. They're like, I just can never get a partner. Well, we have to look at why that is, right? So there's a pocket there, or somebody could have a pocket with finances or with their health or so many different things. You know, we have the base core that we work through, which are finances and health and relationships, because everything in life is a relationship. So we have to be able to build those and understand why I'm the way I am and why my partner's the way they are. So one of the biggest things I have is people coming in, it's like, they just want to talk about their partner. My partner is so messed up. And if we could just fix my partner, my life would be so much better. And it's like, well, why are you with that partner? We have to look at that, because you're definitely matched up with them for a reason. You're trying to get something out of that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, well, I was like, I know we've had these kinds of conversations before. Yeah. I had a conversation with one of my friends recently, and she is actually deciding to try and get off of anti-anxiety medication. So I wanted to talk to you about that. Her therapist actually encouraged her to not do that because of the withdrawal side effects. And I was talking to her. I said, I'm really proud of you, because thankfully, thanks to you, Anne, otherwise I probably would have ended up on medication too, because I would have not known what to do with myself. But I feel like all my friends who are on medication, they just say that they feel really numb, and it's like they still don't know the reason why they're feeling anxious and why they're feeling depressed. So is there a way for people to not have to be medicated? Do you think that's actually like a chemical imbalance in the brain, or?
Okay, so there's multiple different things that you went into there.
Sorry.
First and foremost, I don't treat your friend. So I don't know what's going on there. We only know the information she's imparting on us. So her therapist or her psychiatrist, whomever she's seeing, could have very specific reasons for why they don't want them to come off. It may be because of how hard it is to wean off of those, which you would always do with your medical doctor, which it is. And we've discussed this, that what I see when my clients working with their medical doctor and then seeing me nutritionally, when they're weaning off of medication, when they get to about that 50% point, like because they're weaning, they're coming down, it's very, very challenging. And they actually hold it to their liver, like they don't want to let it go. Like they're like, it's an addiction, right? They're actually addicted to it. And they don't want to let it go. There are ways to ease that. If somebody is coming off of a psychiatric drug or any drug and they're working with their medical doctor, if they work with somebody like me, there are things that we can give them nutritionally to help ease the symptoms, liver support and things. Specifically, exactly what you asked, is there a way to not be on medication and work through your emotions? That's a large question. Yes, in my opinion, I'm not for psychiatric drugs, but there's not to shame anybody that's on them. The biggest thing that I see is people that have been on psychiatric drugs or are on them is that they feel very numb, like you said. And when somebody is in that state of feeling numb, it is a challenge to get them to feel, right? Because they've done all of this work to feel numb because something was so painful. Now, at a certain point, maybe because everybody's an individual, maybe they needed that. And there are certain things that we can't process in real time. The biggest thing I want people to do is process most of their emotions in real time. But we're talking about a death or a divorce or losing our job. Those things can't be processed all at once in real time. They have to kind of be broken up into little bits. So it just depends on what kind of trauma somebody has that has occurred. and where they are on that scale and how their emotional regulation is to begin with. So we have to take everything on a case by case basis. In an optimal world, we would all learn emotional regulation as children because our parents would be emotionally regulated and they would be teaching us this, not sitting down and being like, this is how you emotionally regulate, but by being regulated and not having huge mood swings and by being there for your child when they're having an issue, then we wouldn't have the kind of world that we have today. But we have a pretty upside down world with a lot going on. So, there are ways to work through things, and we all have to work through our things if we want to get to where we want to be. Optimally, I would like people to not be on medication. But once you are, there is very specific ways in which you have to come off of it. I think that a lot of medical doctors and a lot of psychiatrists and therapists, that is their tool to a certain degree. And they're using their tool. If you go to a surgeon, you're going to get surgery. That makes sense. So they're using their tool, and a lot of people are opening up to different techniques. So we are seeing with a lot of different doctors pushes in the right direction, in my opinion.
That's great. Yeah. It just always kind of amazes me how many people are on anti-anxiety meds and antidepressant meds. It's like, how have we gotten there as a society? Like, why is everyone so anxious? Why is everyone depressed?
Well, it's the nature of our world. Our world is pretty upside down. If we're just talking about modern society, like our freaking phones, because people feel as though they can have access to you at any point, right? You saw the text. When somebody says, "Oh, I didn't see your text," you're like lying, and so
yeah, you did.
Yeah, you 100% did. You just didn't answer it. And so then that can start a whole bunch of stuff. And then social media, right? People are just scrolling through that all day. It's an onslaught of information and just visual stimulation. We are basically stimulated 24/7. We weren't made for that kind of a life. I was just watching a movie with my daughter the other day, and, she's 15. Movies today are very fast paced. If you go back and watch a movie from when I was a kid in the 80s, much slower pace, and it has a much more calming effect, even if it is an adventure movie or a typically faster paced movie. So we're just looking at everything speeding up. So everything's speeding up. We're asking a lot more of ourselves. We're asking ourselves to be able to do everything and to do it with a smile on our face. And, it's just not the way in which we were meant to live our lives. We were meant to live our lives in a way that is much more holistic and much slower paced. We have to kind of determine what our priorities are. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, their priority is, what do people think of me? And when we add that in, we're adding so much stress because nobody is ever going to impress everybody. That's just not how the world works. So we have to work on it being okay when somebody doesn't like us.
That's something that I struggle with a lot, and you've helped me a lot with. Going back to the topic of parenting, another question that I had from a friend of mine was, she is a mom of 2 boys, and she's an amazing mom, but she was talking about how it's so encouraged in our society to, for boys to not cry and to not feel their emotions. So do you have any thoughts about that? And do you work through the processing with males differently in your course?
No. We're all human beings. So we're all generating these emotions, these vibrations, and we all need to process in pretty much the same way. I would actually say that in society today, it is encouraged for men to cry and for little boys to cry, much more so than it ever has been.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that, first and foremost, she sounds like a fantastic mom because she's concerned about her children and if she's doing a good enough job, which to some extent tells me that she's doing a pretty good job. With boys, everybody is an individual. So I'm always looking at, where they're stuck or where the energy block is. But specifically with boys, they have to process just like girls, we all have to process in our own way. It was interesting. I was watching my kids. I have a son and a daughter, and they were watching like a dating show on TV. And he was breaking down the psychology of the girl, and she was breaking down the psychology of the guys. And it was just so interesting. So we do have different responses, right? But we all need to learn to process in the kind of the same way, and to know that that's okay.
Right. On the topic of men and being emotional, one of my favorite podcasters is Theo Vaughn. I was watching an episode of his the other day, and he was catching everyone up on his life, and he was saying how good he feels lately. And he was saying that it makes him uncomfortable and he feels like he can't trust it because he's not used to that feeling, which I think is something that's really common for a lot of people. I think for me, I'm comfortable feeling bad about myself. So it's like I'll find myself in situations where maybe it's something that could have happened to someone on any given day, but I internalize it, I blow it up, and I make it about me and like, oh, it means I suck or it means XYZ. So is that a thing, like having emotional addiction?
100%. We're all emotionally addicted and we all need to work through it. I actually just had somebody in my office earlier today, and we were talking about her specific emotional addiction. Hers is beating herself up if she doesn't achieve top. So I work with a lot of people, the very type A, want to achieve the top in whatever profession that they're in, and never giving themselves any credit if they're doing anything under that, meaning they're just starting a new job, you have to kind of build up, right? We have to allow things to grow naturally. And one of the things that I was telling her and that we were going back and forth on is that you're going to mess up in life. Like that's going to happen. You're going to have challenges and we're going to fail. Not one of us is perfect. And we have to be able to have that happen and then look at it. Okay. Is there something that I could do to correct this and or moving forward? Not say, wow, I suck because I just failed, and then beat yourself up. And that's the spiral that people go into. You were talking about him feeling uncomfortable, feeling good. And it's very common when we're doing emotional work, as we are releasing our anxiety, to start having anxiety about not having anxiety. It's like, when's the bad thing going to happen?
Yeah.
And I get it. We're comfortable feeling, we're all trying to get to that homeostasis of the first emotions, of the first really strong emotion that we had as a child. And that could be shame. It could be abandonment. It could be fear. It's fear of what? Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. I mean, this is pretty basic psychology, that we're all afraid of something. We're trying to get back to that thing. And you were saying that you have, where you beat yourself up for not feeling good enough about yourself, like you suck. And you're trying to get yourself back there. And when we do the work, we can see why. Okay, this is why this is happening. And then we can have techniques to get ourselves out of it. And as there's a lot of different things out there. And what I see quite common is, okay, we're going to uncover, unpack, unwind, whatever it is, to get to the reason why we're like this. And then from there, it's like, okay, now you have awareness. And then from there, though, well, what do I do? Just because I know something doesn't mean it's all better. It's like now because what a lot of people can do with that is say, well, that's just the way I am then. And I guess this is my problem because my mom was like this. My dad did this to me. My mom did this to me. I guess I'm just messed up. And it's not true. We had trauma and we can work through things and we can catch ourselves in our patterns and step out of our pattern. We can get off the hamster wheel of self-help. We can get off of our emotional addiction. Now they'll always be there. There are imprints. So they'll be where we go in a time of stress. Like you've mentioned before, overthinking, in a time of stress, a lot of people are going to overthink. They're going to overthink, or they're going to withdraw, or they're going to fight. People have some pretty basic responses. And we want to be able to see that before it actually happens, before we actually start creating all those drugs in our brains to get us to where we want to be, so that we don't have to blow up our lives all the time. We want our emotions and our emotional behavior to match what's actually happening, not how we're being triggered, because that's what happens, right? When you overthink, when you withdraw, when you get angry, for the most part, people are reacting to stuff that's not even why they're upset. It's triggering something from their past. It's triggering all that stuff that they push down. And it's something that they haven't actually integrated as themselves or admitted about themselves. And so we want to use techniques to not only uncover and bring to the surface as to why, but also to help process through.
That makes sense. I know when I am getting into chronic overthinking, something that always surprises me that you suggest is doing cardio. I hate doing cardio, but you have always told me that it's really good for overthinking because it really puts you back into your body.
100%. There have been so many studies done that show that cardio is more effective than antidepressants. The issue is that we just have to do it more often. We don't have to do it for long. I'm not saying go run a marathon. I'm not saying you have to do it for an hour a day. It can be 15 minutes a day. It can be 10 minutes a day. But we have to spike the heart rate. And what we have to do that is going to be based on the individual, where they are physically, how physically fit they are. A good book that I usually suggest to most people to read is Spark by Ratty. And it was this man that did all of these studies on kids in inner cities to see why the grades were lower, and he went in with a lot of different things. Excellent book. And he started a program where he was getting the kids to do, they had signed up for it, cardio in the morning. And he actually put heart rate monitors on them because what he was seeing is, we're so excited about all these kids that are like just breezing through it. But the kids that were struggling were like, hey, you need to do better. And you realize once you put heart rate monitors on them that the kids that were slower were actually trying so much harder. They were actually spiking their heart rate way higher than the kids that had it easy. So this just got his wheels turning in his head. And what he actually ended up proving was that we can create new brain. We can create new brain. And in creating that new brain, we were talking about emotional addictions. We have patterns that we follow. I liken them to trails on a hike, right? You can't necessarily get rid of that trail, but you can stop following it and it's going to get covered over while you're ingraining another trail, So that cardio helps do it. It's going to help us make our serotonin, our dopamine. It helps make all of the feel-good chemicals that we need to help regulate us. So in today's world, a lot of times cardio is looked at. It's interesting to me. We have such a mental health crisis, and out there we're telling people lift weights. Lifting weights is great. Doing yoga is great. All of these things are fantastic. None of it does what intense cardio will do for you when we're talking about emotional regulation. And so it's interesting to me that a lot of people are vilifying cardiovascular exercise. Maybe it's not the number one thing for weight loss, but when we're not talking about that, we're talking about our overall fitness, and mental health definitely falls into that. We need to do it. And in doing it, we can release the need for so much medication. And getting back to that guy's study, the kids' grades just went higher and higher. It was really, really awesome. It's a very good read.
As you were talking, I was realizing how much I hate cardio and I resist doing it. And you're telling me all these wonderful things about all the benefits. And I'm like, why do I always resist doing things that I know will make me feel good?
It makes you feel, and sometimes you don't want to feel, right?
Yeah.
I have a client who was starting with my emotional reset, and she knew the technique we were using to allow things to come out of our feeling centers. And she hates cardio. Like, she hates it. And she came to my class because I teach booty yoga, which spikes the heart rate. And she's doing it. And after class, she was like, I am releasing during this. I could feel, right, because, you're gasping in air. You're actually opening these things. She's like, I felt the release. She's like, and I'm like, exactly. So, it's experiential. That's a lot of times people want me to tell them, this is exactly how you emotional regulate. I can tell you a lot of things. A lot of people can tell you a lot of things. You actually have to do the techniques because it's experiential, just like cardio.
Oh my God.
So give it a try.
I'll add it to my list. When it comes to doing cardio and actually doing the work and how you said it's experiential, obviously that means that you have to take responsibility for yourself.
100%.
I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. Like you said, they want to blame something. They just don't want to admit that they're the problem. So how do you work with someone that has a hard time even like beginning there and taking full responsibility for themselves?
Well, there's a couple of things there. Yes, I want people to take radical responsibility because then we take ownership of our life, right? Then we're in the driver's seat. And if you're not in the driver's seat, you are basically running your car without driving it. Or a very famous quote is a derelict ship, like a ship without a captain is derelict and it just will run ashore. It's not going to get where it wants to go, right? So we have to take responsibility. But however, remember we talked about you have to kind of know where you are. So somebody that wants to blame somebody else, they're in blame. So they're like, I could do it if it wasn't for my husband or my mom. Cool. True. You tell them right. You tell them right. So there's different advice for people at different levels. That's why I was saying there's different advice for people with medication. There's different advice for different people depending on where they are at. So somebody that doesn't want to take responsibility, yes, you eventually have to get them to take responsibility, but that's going to be a longer road, right? Because they're not there yet. They're not showing up. They're not showing up to a course being like, here to take responsibility, here to do it. They're showing up. Hey,
I'm the problem.
But they're showing exactly. That'd be great if everybody showed up like that. It'd be so freaking easy. But what they're showing up like is, hey, so like, can I bring my husband in? Can you just like fix him real quick? Or like my mom, oh my God, my mom, she's like the problem. And it's like, she's such a mess. She doesn't deal with anything. Yeah. Right. No. And I'm not making fun to make fun of these people. It's making
we can all relate. We can all relate.
100%. And we all do that sometimes. Sometimes we're just like, oh my God, my boss. But whatever it is, you have to see that you put yourself there. You know, I mean, you didn't put yourself with your mom, but I mean, she is your mom and you are interacting with her in a certain way. And there are ways to make that easier. I know that a while ago, like many, many years ago, when I started doing this work, I actually had to take a little bit of a break from talking to my dad. And that was really hard. But in doing that, it gave me the perspective that I needed to make some changes in the way that our relationship was going. And I know that I've worked with you in that manner. Like I've said, you know, I think maybe you might want to consider taking a little bit of a break from that person. And it was funny because I remember your response was like, oh no, I can't do that. They will not be okay with that. I'm like, well, maybe we need to look at the fact that they're not okay with you taking a little bit of a break for like a week, you know. Well, that's a super red flag, right? Like, no, I can't be away, that they won't understand.
I don't see red flags. Red flags they're green to me. I'm colorblind when it comes to flags.
Well, yeah, because we're all trying to just get in relationships with people again so that we can, that are like our biggest triggers, so that we can prove that we're all good. You know, like I'm special enough now that
I can change them.
I can change them. Right.
I can heal them.
Exactly. That's not true. Please don't try to heal people. People have to heal on their own. And I mean, you can hand them some tools. And you can hand them, you know, you can love them, but you know, it's like, hey, you can eat dinner next to me, but like, you can't sit at my table, you know, for there's certain people that are dangerous for us to be around until we've emotionally regulated or we've worked through a lot of things. And those people are the people that are going to hit our highs and our lows. And those people can be dangerous people for us to be around, not because they're bad people. Okay. But because we haven't done our work to be able to be around a person that is like that, because they remind us too much of someone from our past, typically, usually one of our parents. And if that's the case, especially if it's somebody that reminds us of both of our parents, they're hitting a lot of things.
Double whammy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've never known some of them. But that doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong. They may be, but it means that we have to understand why we keep trying to have a relationship with them.
I was going to say that was my next question is people that you choose to surround yourself with, can they affect your emotions, or is that kind of just a cop out?
Both. You know, I mean, so the way that I look at it is this: our emotional state should not be based on what's going on in the outside world or by our circumstances. Okay. Our emotional state is based on us. Now, that becomes really hard for a lot of people. They're like, no, but let me give you this laundry list of what's going on in my life. Okay, great. But if you need your life to all be perfectly lined up for you to feel good, you're fucked. You know, that doesn't make any sense because that's never going to happen. You know, we're going to have challenges in life, and we want to be able to rise to the occasion of the challenge and work through the challenge. We don't want to have a challenge and be like, that's it. Over. You know, so there's no life. There's no new age tool. There's no anything like that waves a wand and goes, okay, no challenges for you. You don't have any more of those because you're all fixed. No, what we want is to be able to meet our challenge and walk through it, feel our emotions. Things are going to be hard. We need to get to the point where we're comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And that is what most people do not want to do, you know? So we're having to get to that point where we are comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And that's why I have a lot of people do stuff that is uncomfortable, you know?
You've had me work through some uncomfortable things, and I feel like I usually, in my true dramatic fashion, I have a little temper tantrum and I get mad at you. But whenever I do end up pulling through and completing it, I'm always so amazed at how big I feel. And that's not like an ego thing. It just, I feel so, my energy feels so expanded. And I remember telling you one time when I did something particularly challenging and I was successful with it, I told you, I was like, this kind of like fucks with my mind, because what else can I do? You know,
100%, 100%. But that's, you hit it spot on. So going back to what we were talking about, if somebody is in the lowest emotion, if they're in apathy, they're using all of their energy to push down feeling, right? If they're getting numb, they're pushing down. So as we go work through things, we have access to more energy. Because we're not using it to push something down. Like if I'm using all of my energy, like I'm sitting on a weight, like a leg press machine, and I'm using all of my energy to push that weight stack away from me, I don't have energy to like curl my hair or something. That's not going to happen. So as we stop doing that and allow ourselves to feel and work through things, we have more energy to go and do more without it feeling hard, right? Doesn't mean it's not challenging. And when I say not hard, I mean non-exhausting. It doesn't exhaust us. It actually makes us thrive, and it makes us feel so much better. And then we want to do more things because we want to put ourselves out into the world. We want to share what we know. That's what everybody is here for, is to share their specific gifts with the world, you know? And so I remember the exact thing you're talking about. And it's interesting to me. I'll have a lot of clients that will be like, oh, I just want to do what you do. And I'm like, really? Because like people get really mad at me sometimes. Like it is not always fun. Even people that know for a really long time get really mad at me sometimes. And that doesn't feel fantastic. But it's like, I liken it to being a good parent, because we had talked about parenting. Being a good parent, you want to be able to help your children work through things, right? And that means sometimes they're going to be mad at you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
If your children are never mad at you, it's a situation that we need to look at. Like, why is that? And you want to be able to be there to help walk them through and help them process so that they can grow into the wonderful adults that we know they can be. And the biggest thing I see with parenting is that parents are like, hey, I want you to be like all emotionally regulated, just like be good. And I'm like, why would you ever think that your child could just do that on their own when you're not there, right? Like your child can only be where you're at. So like the biggest thing for parents is if you see your kid keep repeating something, just like our friends, we have to take a look at ourselves. And what do I keep doing? You know, and what was going on when this situation first occurred? And like, we kind of have to work our way back on that.
When you said we have to, what did you say about your friends? You have to take a look at yourself.
Yeah. So, okay. So when you had asked, I'm going back to the question you asked earlier, because now I'm remembering what that was. Do our friends affect our emotions? Well, our emotional state. Now, when we're thinking about that, I like to say, if I put on some really sad music and we're like driving in the car, so you're like, have to listen to it, you're going to start to feel like I'll immediately start to cry a lot of times, which I don't mind. I like crying to sad music sometimes. But if I put on something really upbeat that you know the words to and you want to sing along with, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel different, right? So if you have friends that are chronically in a certain state of being, then we have to look at ourselves and say, oh, am I chronically in that state of being or next to it? Because here's the thing, when we're going back to, I want to fix my partner, I want to fix my mom, I want to fix my friends, you can't be that far away from where your friends are. Like you might be like, if we're looking at the map that I use, you might be one step above them, but you're not going to be like 5 or 10. That doesn't even make sense because you're not going to be attracted to that. our friends can affect our mood in that way, but also we're attracted to them because of how we are, So it's good to do some self-evaluation. That's not to say that all human beings don't have highs and lows, right? We help our friends when they're going through a certain situation. I'm more talking about a state of being that's pretty consistent.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just like questioning my life right now, going through my Rolodex of people.
Excellent.
You have that effect on everyone. Going back to the whole challenges and working through them, I think that is something that's really tripped me up, is because before I met you, I was really into the self-help stuff, law of attraction, basically, like you said, someone telling you like, you have all the power, like everything is going to be great. Like you just think happy thoughts and then your life is going to be perfect. So I think I bought into that for so long. And then when challenges would arise, I would try to either like positive think my way out of it, or I would feel like a failure. So I think sometimes I still get tripped up by that. So I don't know why, but it feels really like liberating for you to tell me, and probably tell everyone else, like, hey, there are going to be challenges.
Well,
like,
of course.
It's normal. It's fine.
You'd be surprised.
I know, but it sounds like you just forget that it's a thing. For me, at least, I'm always like, I'm a loser, because it's like, you're not seeing everyone else's struggles. Like kind of like back to the social media thing. It's like, I always see everyone's wins and compare myself, and look at me, I'm spiraling out talking about this.
No, and you had mentioned something about that. You had said something about celebrities one time, and I'm like, how do you have any idea what the rest of their life is like? You're equating having a good life with having fame and money. We could go back to, I think it was Carnegie. Somebody was interviewing him and asked him the secret of his success. And he was like, well, define success. And he's like, your money. And he's like, well, if you want to define success that way, okay. And then he explained that, but he goes, I actually challenge you to define success in another way. Like, actually think about it. And the way that I define it, you could define it as resources, right? Your relationships, the things that you have around you that you want, your time, your energy, and the way in which you want to live your life, which is going to be different from how other people want to live their life. If money was the only thing that mattered, then everybody that was rich would be happy. And that's not true. So it doesn't mean that money's bad, because money surely is needed to be able to do all the things that we want to do and actually just be out of survival mode. But we have to really redefine what success is and what happiness is. It's a very, very interesting thing. But yes, all people have challenges. Like even if you're going biblical, like God doesn't say he's going to keep you from challenges. He says he's going to see you through them. Like if you want to go biblical, I do tend to do that sometimes. And we want to know that he's going to carry us through. So when you're talking about a lot of new age things, it becomes very attractive to say, just change your mind and everything is going to change. Now, I'm talking about emotional regulation. So changing your perspective can help a great deal. What doesn't help is just pretending things, using an affirmation. I love myself now. My life is wonderful. Because you're lying to yourself. And when we're talking about that biofield, now you just learn not to trust yourself even more, So we have to actually work through some things. You had posted a clip from my course about how just start to notice things. Like if somebody said the color red, you're just going to see red all the time. And that is true. You will. And depending on what emotional state you're in, that could be a good thing. Or it could be where you're just pointing out where you don't have any red. So where you're not happy. It can widen the gap. It can widen the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So that's why I say it depends on where the person is, the advice that they need, because advice that you could give one person because of where their state of being is going to be very different from what another person needs. They might not even be able to take it in, or it would have the opposite effect. So that's why finding out where we are is so important. But yeah, we're always going to have challenges. But we can have
bottom line,
we want higher quality challenges, right? So we want things, you want to have so many clients that you can't fit them in and you need to expand and maybe have people work for you. What you don't want is the problem of I don't have enough clients. See, they're both challenges, but they're just higher quality challenge.
Thank you for reading my mind. I was going to be like, give me an example of a higher quality challenge.
They all fucking suck. No,
they do all fucking suck.
No, they don't. Because think about this, in a relationship, It could be, I'm working through something with my husband, and we're both committed and we want to talk about this and we want to work through it. That's a higher quality challenge than I have no partner and nobody in the world is right for me and everything always sucks. Those are very different challenges.
For sure. That does make a lot of sense. So seeing as how, going back to the emotional scale and the thought of working your way upwards. So the highest emotion is love, correct?
Peace.
Or is it peace?
It could be peace, yeah. But I don't even usually have people focus on those two things because
you don't? Okay.
because it really doesn't make any sense, because where are most people? Most people, the majority of people, are going to be under courage. So why would we focus up at the top? That's like setting you up for failure, right?
Sure.
So we're having people, most people are cycling through 2 or 3 emotions. They're cycling through anxiety, fear, courage. I'm sorry, fear, anger, courage. Like they're cycling through that. Like they get the courage, they do something, then they might drop back down because they got scared, right?
Yeah.
Or they're cycling through like apathy, grief, fear. If you go higher up, you could be cycling through like courage, passion, and maybe up to love. Like you could be cycling through that, but that's rare, and that's not somebody that's usually looking for help feeling better. That's just not. So, and you see, and we've talked about this, you see so many people walking around like love and light, man, everything's great. And it's just like, wow, their life is a dumpster fire. So maybe we could just maybe take a step back and go like, is love and light solving your problems? Or are you taking that responsibility? Because you talked about challenge and like manifesting new age style. Okay. So a lot of times people are, I'm just going to think about it and it's going to occur. Okay.
Feel the feeling, imagine yourself having it. Yeah.
There's nothing actually wrong with that. Like if I want a new car, I'll go sit in it, but I also know that I have to make the money and go buy the car. I don't think it's going to end. I don't think it's going to end up at my door. And sitting in the car might make me more excited about it, which will make me work harder or work in a different way to get the money to go do that. But, this thought that things are just going to show up at my doorstep, doesn't make any sense, right. and then we're like, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing life wrong. And then we feel bad. Right. Now, sometimes you're going to get some wins on that, right? If you think about something enough, but it's taking those action steps, right? It's like deciding what you want, where you want to be, and then how do I get there? Making a plan and then, executing the plan. And not being so inflexible that if things happen, you can't shift on that plan. But, I see a lot of people that are like, so just like, I've been thinking about it and like, my man's going to arrive soon, or like the money's on its way. These are not bad things, but it's like, are you actually leaving your house to go meet the man? Or are you just like at home and like, you hope they're going to show up? And so these are, we have to take action. Right? We're in a 3D world, so let's do some 3D stuff. There is some truth to laws of attraction. It's just not it's not what we think it is.
I think that's actually really practical advice, thinking back to all the law of attraction stuff that I used to be into, because they literally would tell you that, like, go sit in the car and you'll feel it, and then everything will just kind of like draw itself to you. But like you were saying, you have to give people advice for where they're at. So it is kind of like twisted to think about all these people that are just following this same advice. And I'm sure they're all just kind of feeling like shit because it's not actually solving any problem. And it's kind of delusional when you think about it.
Well, it is delusional, and there's some truth to it, but those are the best lies, aren't they? So the best lie is going to have a lot of truth to it. And because then you can't pick out the parts that are true and not true. You're like, no, but if this is true, then the whole thing has to be true. And I know this part's true. Because there is some truth to it. I talk all the time about if you're living your life authentically and you're being yourself, you are going to attract the people to you that are supposed to work with you and the person that's supposed to be your partner. That is true, and we just talked about, hey, if all my friends are depressed, there's a pretty good chance that I may be depressed, or like right above it, or right below it,
right?
So there is truth to that. And there is truth to attracting, like, you attract your vibe, that there is truth to it. It's just that it's not the whole truth. And it gets really twisted and turned around to, hey, just be the vibe and everything's going to be fine. And you're like, what? So, no, because I work with a lot of people that have been down that road And the hardest thing for them to hear is, man, you're going to have to get a job. Like that for a lot of people is really hard to hear. I'm like, you're going to have to work. And they're like, but no, I'm doing this law of attraction. Okay. You know, or you might have to get another job while you're building, you know, your dream business or whatever. We have to be practical in some sense to get what we want out of this life, you know. Makes sense to me. You know?
No, it makes total sense. That's one thing that I really love about working with you, because I've worked with, I mean, I hate to even compare you to a psychic, but I've worked with psychic people or people that have done energy work in the past, and it was always missing the logic. It was always missing the, like you said, the 3D component, the human, like the action part of it. So I find that is the most rewarding thing amongst, well, everything that I've done with you has been really rewarding, but that is something that I really appreciate about you is like, you'll sit me down and you'll be like, all right, like, what are you doing? What are the actionable steps that you're taking to get to your goal? And I'm like, oh, let me pull up my journal. Yeah, pretty much. But like, but it's, I feel like that's like the missing key for a lot of people is like taking action and having those like tangible goals and writing things down. Like, I think that's missing a lot in
100%, especially for overthinkers. And we've talked about this. Well, no, I mean, at base, I'm an overthinker. So like same. So I have to catch myself because an overthinker, one thought can splice into like 1,000 thoughts, you know, and then you're down a rabbit hole and it's not helping you. So we have to back ourselves up and we have to be able to identify, you know, what is wishful thinking or fantasy or rabbit hole and what is my actual intuition. You know, those are two way different things. And I've heard it described many, many ways, but base intuition is going to make you uncomfortable. Remember, we have to get comfortable getting uncomfortable. Remember, so like the things that you've had to go do that even starting this, right? You're like, I know I'm supposed to do this. So that wasn't comfortable, was it? No. You know, whereas like overthinking could take us in a couple different directions, down a really dark spiral, a rabbit hole of I suck, I can't do this, or into I'm doing everything right. Everything's fantastic. I don't need to change anything. Everything's well, because you know, you see that too, right? Like, remember, I don't have to change anything. Just my partner does. Like, so these are just the different things that we see. And it's just really interesting to me. I teach a lot of intuition classes. I do not teach intuition to people that have not taken my emotional regulation class because that makes no sense. And you will see everybody wants to sign up for the intuition. I want to sign up for intuition. I want everything to be better. I want to know what to do. I'm like, how does that make any sense if you can't even tell if you're telling the truth to yourself? You know, that makes no sense.
It's funny that you say that because even when I was editing the episode with Rachel, and I kind of cringed that I even talked about it, but when I took my psychic development class years ago and I was like, oh, I can like channel information. And I was like, oh, that's not even like true anymore because I'm not that person. And even back then, whatever I was channeling at the time, like probably wasn't good for me. And it doesn't even happen like that. Like even when I was explaining, I think it was just like, I don't know. That's just like the narrative that I've been saying to people for so long that it just came out of my mouth. And I'm like, that doesn't even happen like that anymore. I feel like now whenever I do get sparks of anything, it's like I'm having a conversation and all of a sudden I just will say something. It's like, I don't know. It's just different. So as you were talking, I'm like, okay, that's probably because my emotions are different. I'm attracting, I don't know. Am I making sense?
Well, right. Well, we do evolve, right? We do heal and we do become more ourselves, more our real true selves. And we let a lot of things drop off. Now, I remember a conversation with you that I had and you were like, oh, my spirit guides. I'm like, oh, really? Because who are they? And you're like, well, I don't know. They're just my spirit guides. I'm like, okay, I'm not cool with that. I don't know who that is. I'm like, not okay with that. And the biggest thing that pushes against people is when I do teach intuition classes, first and foremost, people are like, where is it coming from? I'm like, God, like God Almighty, that's where we're going. If you're not with that, I don't know how to help you. And that's okay. Maybe this just is not for you at this time. And that's cool. And then I'll get people that are like, no, I really want to learn from you. I'm like, well, this is how I teach. So this is what we're going to have to work with. And they're like, well, could I just like connect to like, I don't know, my higher self or like my like angel or and I'm like, well, or my spirit guide. And I promise you, every time I ask somebody, well, who are your spirit guides? Because if you just ask people questions, you're going to get some interesting answers. But but every single time I ask that question, I get the same stuff. Well, somebody told me Archangel Michael, or somebody told me, yeah, for real, like, and I'm like, okay. Or they'll give me like, and like, so somebody told you, but you don't know, but they're your guide and you're talking with them. What is happening? That doesn't sound clean or clear. Like what's going on there? And that's why I'm like, let's get emotionally regulated. Let's learn what we're doing to ourselves and our own patterns way before we're ever wanting to go down an intuition route, because people want to use intuition to bypass their emotional regulation. They're like, yeah, I'm just going to like, okay, so like, because they think of intuition as psychic, right? They think of it as, okay, so I'm going to know what to do. You know what is not the most fun thing in the whole wide world? Knowing what to do. Well, because then you have to do it, right? So that pushes up against you. A lot of times people are like, oh, it must be so great to have a lot of intuitive hits and to like see things or things like that. And I'm like, I mean, there are benefits, but there are also like, hey, you have to do this. Yeah. That's hard. And if you're not in an emotional state of being that can handle that, that's not going to work out well, Right.
Yeah. Wow. You just blow my mind every time I talk to you. Oh,
excellent.
Excellent. Well, I'm so appreciative that you came on here to chat. I have been talking about you to everyone that I make eye contact, like I said in my last episode.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, literally.
The Minnesota nod. I'm like, yes.
The Minnesota nod, exactly. But no, literally everyone that's in my life knows about you and how much I rave about you. So I'm so thankful that you made time to come on here. And I know people are going to want to know more about you even further. So where can people find you?
Great. quantumwellness.site. And I'm sure you'll put it on underneath the information.
I absolutely will.
And like I said, everybody gets 30% off my course if they want to apply for that, and 20% off any service. So I offer many services, and all of them are offered remote or in person. So you do not have to be close. But also, everybody I know knows about you. So same.
That. Oh my God.
Everybody's like, oh, your friend, your really pretty friend with the short hair. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Her.
Oh my gosh. We love each other. It's just so sweet. I'm just kidding. Okay. Well, thank you for the discount and everything. So that's awesome. So maybe, other people in my life can up level with me and we don't have to be the toxic friends anymore. Right.
That'd be awesome.
That would be great.
If you want to be really non-toxic, you just send this specifically to the people that are very
yeah, just anonymously. Like, hey, so I had a guest. This is going to be my sneaky way of talking shit to people now. Like, hey, so I had this guest on my podcast and I think you might really benefit from
yeah.
Hint, nudge, nudge. So
we have to laugh at ourselves. You have to laugh at yourself.
We have to. Otherwise, we'll cry, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Becca. Thank you again. And everyone out there, until next time, stay brilliant.